All right, we are live. I'm so excited. Episode 66 of the Gretch Afternoon Drum Break. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. I love doing these live. Pre-recordeds are fun, and you can control what happens with the internet and some editing and things like that. But this show was born out of doing it live, no net, just it's really exciting. I'm so excited for today's guest. It's going to be incredible. I wanted first give some thank yous and some shout outs. First of all, thank you to my friend, Mr. Lucas von Gretsch, for introducing me to Stanton. I'm always grateful for your support, Lucas. Thank you so much. And a big thank you to Maurice Johnson for another spectacular video and flyer, and also to Carlos Martinez for making the Gretch Afternoon Drum Break website a reality. So the Gretch Afternoon Drum Break.com. Check it out. All the interviews are on that site, and there's going to be some other things added shortly. Finally, I wanted to congratulate Fred and Dinah Gretch, because yesterday was the grand opening for, I want to get this right, that great Gretsch Sound Museum located at the Plant Riverside District in downtown Savannah, Georgia. It's a permanent display of music, memorabilia highlighting more than 135 years of Gretsch instruments. So congratulations to Fred and Dinah, and thank you for all the support that you give. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to do a little introduction here. In fact, I wrote it out because this gentleman has done so much with his life so far, and he's not even 50 yet. So I'm so excited to be chatting with today's guest. He's one of the preeminent drummers, educators, band leaders, entrepreneurs in all of music. His 25 plus career in music has yielded much success in different areas, no doubt due in part to him working his tail off and fueled by his love of this great funky music from his hometown of New Orleans, Louisiana. He's a Grammy Award-winning drummer and founding member of the band Galactic, 1994, has his own musical projects, is a respected clinician and educator, has 2 instructional book DVD releases, owns the Stanton Moore Drum Academy, which is an online drum lesson program, and is part owner of the legendary New Orleans music venue Tipitinas. He has a bachelor's degree in both music and business from Loyola University. Everyone, please welcome Mr. Stanton Moore.
So great to see you. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you? There's snow on the ground here. There's probably no snow where you are.
There's no snow where we're at, but thank you for that introduction. That was a lovely introduction, and I have to say you hit just about all the points.
Yes, and I'm sure there's more. Man, I'm so excited to talk to you because as we spoke about off camera, I've been a fan of your playing and a fan of Galactic for a long time now, and it's really, and as well as so as your instructional material that you have out on the Stanton Moore Drum Academy. So it's really cool to talk to you and see you in person. And man, oh man, thanks so much for taking the time. You know, I'm glad we could squeeze it in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good to talk to you. I always love talking with fellow Gretsch aficionados and having the multiple platforms that Gretsch provides us with. And it's so great that wherever you are, when you meet another drummer, you're instant friends. And especially if you're a Gretsch fan, then you're just like fast friends, right? It's beautiful what a brand can do for people, and Gretsch being one of those brands. And right before we got on, we talked about being a venue owner, and I want to talk about that, and we'll get into that in a minute. But right now in my life, like, I'm realizing that I'm making more impact as a venue owner than I have as a drummer. And we'll talk about that, but it's something that I'm processing. And because I was there last night to watch Ivan Neville, I didn't even step within 10 feet of the stage. And just the amount of people coming up and saying, "Oh my goodness, thank you for keeping this place going
Yeah.
and you can make an impact with people and a connection with people in so many different genres, so many different styles of music. I have people coming up when we travel now. We're getting back to traveling, and people coming up being like, "Thank you for what y'all are doing to keep Tipitinas alive." And as a drummer, you've got people who like your music, and they come to you. As a venue owner, you got people who like all kinds of music, and they're like, "I saw Soundgarden there, or I saw Pearl Jam there, or I saw this
Wow.
this Cajun band on a Sunday there." Like and so it's taking a while to process, but it's like, wow, the impact that you can make with a great brand. And Gretch is one of those brands. And then I started talking about Tipitinas. Tipitinas is one of those brands, and we knew that when we decided to buy it. We all like cashed in part of our retirement and put together this deal to buy our favorite venue in the world. And now I'm realizing, like, holy crap, I've worked all my life to be a good drummer, and I'm actually making more impact and making more people happy as a venue owner than I could have imagined as a drummer. It's it's a lot to process.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. What was your situation like when COVID hit? How long have you been have you owned Tipitinas?
So that's a great story. So for people who are watching who may not be familiar yet, like as a kid growing up in New Orleans, there are goals, right? I want to win a Grammy. I want to play on
Wow.
a million selling record. I want to play on a platinum record, and I want to play at Tipitinas.
Wow.
Like those are the goals. Like Ivan said it last night. Ivan Neville, they opened up for Dave Matthews at Madison Square Garden last weekend, 2 nights, Friday, Saturday. And Ivan last night on stage, it was just him on piano, Tony Hall on bass, and their drummer, Devin Troskler. So it was a stripped down like piano set. Ivan Neville said, "It feels great to be here in Tipitina's, the Madison Square Garden of New Orleans."
Oh man.
So it is by no means on the level of Madison Square Garden, but in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And so my dreams were to play there. And so then I got in the band Galactic, and we started touring. And when we first started touring, we were not big enough to play Tipitinas. It holds about 800 people. And
Wow.
so we were not big enough to play there. So after 3-4 years of touring, we got big enough to play the major holidays, which are Mardi Gras, Jazz Fest, New Year's Eve, Halloween. So those four, right, are the biggest. And we became the band that played those every one of those holidays for over 20 years. So we've been on the road for 25 years, but we were the band that played those holidays. So we didn't know this, but the staff and the bartenders nicknamed us Tipitina's house band.
Oh man.
So when the owner decided to sell, like we were one of the only bands that he knew. So he reached out to us and he reached out to me. And I mean, our manager was like, "You guys should own Tipitina's." And so he started hitting the owner of Tipitina's and was like, "Let us know when you're ready to sell." That went on for 2 years.
Wow.
He's like, "I'm not selling it. I'm not selling it." And then once he decided to sell it, the negotiations were like over a year long. It's I'm talking about it a lot because I'm still processing it.
Yeah,
And
it's a big thing. It's
of course, I want to talk about drums. Talking about drums is easy.
I can't imagine actually owning a venue. I play in
I
a lot of
can't
tribute
either.
tribute situations, but I played in a lot of clubs over the years, and you get to know the owners, you get to kind of see the behind the scenes thing, and that's a whole other bunch of headaches that I see they'll, besides, we're the entertainment, but man, I can't imagine but how gratifying it would be knowing that you guys were the unofficial house band, and people, they're thrilled probably that you guys own it. And what is your day-to-day like now? How does that work as far as Tipitina's goes? We'll get to the drums in a second.
Yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, part of the reason that I was a little behind on our preparation before this was because I was on a conference call with Tipitina's, and
Cool.
so it's so funny when we first bought it, we're like, well, none of there are 5 original members of Galactic, so it's the 5 of us, and when we first bought it, we're like, well, it's not like any of us are going to be taking out the trash, or it's like, well, when COVID hit, guess what? We were like literally scrubbing floors and doing weed whacking the back behind. Our keyboard player was weed whacking behind the venue. Like we were doing everything we possibly could, and we have an incredible staff. So luckily, we don't have to put in too much of that elbow grease. Our staff does a lot of that. But if we don't have enough funds to pay staff in the middle of COVID, then we did whatever needed to be done, And so the day-to-day, what we're trying to get to is that we're a board of directors who have traveled the world for 25 years. And we played every major holiday at Tips for 20 years. And if we can stay together for 25 years touring the world, hopefully we can stay together to oversee ownership. We don't think of ourselves as we own it. We think of ourselves as we are the custodians of not just our favorite venue, but as I'm learning everywhere I go. If you wear a Tipitina's shirt anywhere in the world, somebody's going to come up to you and be like, I was there. I was at Tipitina's. I went to New Orleans 20 years ago. It was the best night of my life. And that's the impact that I'm realizing you can have with a brand, right? And that's what Fred and Dinah get all the time, right? Is Fred and Dinah, I've been standing next to Fred at NAMM or at PASIC, and they're like, oh my God. I mean, because Fred bought back Gretch and he returned it. It was a little bit not getting the attention and the love that it deserved. And thank goodness for Fred and Dinah, for Fred doubling down on his family's heritage. And Lucas is all about the family heritage. So, and I've learned that's important, man. You can't just build a brand overnight. So you can't just do it in social media or online. That's years and decades and generations of impact.
Absolutely. I'm grateful to them. I'm telling you. And Galactic did the same thing. It doesn't take 2 weeks or a month. It takes several years for you to build the brand, and that's a great marriage of having that band and you guys owning this. Now I want to go to New Orleans and go to Tipitina's.
You absolutely should. And anybody watching this who hasn't been to New Orleans yet, I mean, have you been to New Orleans yet?
No, but that's going to happen next year. I'm telling you that as well. So I'm going to do a southern swoop. I'm north of Toronto by 90 minutes or so. And we're going to go down and we're going to see the Gretsch Museum. We're going to see Fred and Dinah in the factory, and then come and see Tipitina's. And hopefully you're there. But if not, that's cool too.
If I'm not, I'll still give you the royal treatment. But New Orleans is unlike any other place in the world. And now I haven't been all over the world, but I've been to a lot of places, and I couldn't imagine living anywhere else. And in my experience, there's no such thing as anybody who comes to New Orleans once. People always come to New Orleans and they're like, oh my God, how have I not been here before? And this is my new favorite place. And when can I come back? there are so many people here who came once and now they moved here and live here.
I've
So
I,
many.
I- I've heard that. I have a Canadian friend, a dentist, and he's like, "You got to go." He's a fellow drummer. He's like, "You got to go." I'm telling you, there's no place like New Orleans. You want music, you want a party atmosphere, and an incredible people, and the food. Man, you're killing me here.
It's ridiculous. But what's so amazing is that all over the city, you can go hear incredible music. And so I went last night and had a night off and I went and heard Pedro Segundo, an amazing drummer percussionist at Snug Harbor. Then I went to Tips and heard Ivan Neville with Devin Trosclair on drums. And I got one of the first orders of business once we closed on Tips was I got a USA Brooklyn kit.
Oh,
Andrew Shreve
yeah.
helped me. I said, Andrew, I want to have a Gretsch kit as the house kit in Tips. He said, absolutely, what sizes do you want? And what color? What finish? So we got oyster, cream oyster, Brooklyn, 10, 12, 13, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. Shell bank. So
Woo!
there's anything you want. And every drummer that comes in, they usually text me like, say bro, thanks a lot for making sure that the house kit
Wow,
is top notch. Yeah. So
man.
yeah, drums, we can talk about drums all day long. What should we talk about?
I want to find out when the beginning was for you. How old were you when you started to play? When did you start playing? When did it all begin for you, Stanton?
So for me, I knew that drums were important to me, like as with my earliest memory. So my my mom and my dad started bringing me to Mardi Gras parades when I was 8 months old. So by the time I was 3 years old, I can remember just jumping up and down when the marching bands would come down the street at the parades during Mardi Gras. And I remember that was the most exciting thing for me was like the drum line. And my mom used to have to like hold me back and she'd be like, step back, you're going to get hit in the face with a bass drum mallet. And for me at that age, I was like, that would have been awesome. I was like, yes, let it hit me in the face. Like it was that visceral, it's just like, and anybody watching this, like everybody has a different story about when the drums impacted you. And when it impacts you, it's just like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And so I knew that at like 3 years old, but how do you tell your parents who, my dad played like trumpet in high school, but like there were no musical instruments in the house. So how do you tell your parents like, no, for real, like I'm gonna be a professional drummer? They're like, that sounds great. That sounds great. How about dinner? Let's have dinner. And so, I kept saying it, and then eventually they let me take piano lessons at I think maybe like 8 or 9 years old, and then I kept asking for a drum set. And then they were like, well, if you keep up your grades and you keep practicing piano, then we'll get you a snare drum. So they got me one of those, the Ludwig snare drums in the plastic form molded case. Everybody's seen it.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
A lot of people have owned it. And, it had the stand and the sticks and the drum in that little case. And at the time, it was like the biggest thing to lug around. As a kid, but they got me that, right? They got it for me like from the Mitchell's Music on Veterans Highway. And so I kept up with my grades and I kept up with piano, and they were like, well, if you do all of that and you still want a drum set, we'll get you a drum set next year. So I did, and once they got me a drum set, a CB700 drum set, because we couldn't afford Gretsch yet at the time. and they got me a CD700 drum set for Christmas, and then that was just it. I was like, this is the rest of my life, and that's all I wanted to do was play drums. And luckily, my parents were super supportive, and uh, they're like, "Well, this is what you want to do, then we'll make it. We'll do everything we can to help you make this happen." And then as I developed, I was like, "Well, let's just be honest. I mean, I grew up in the '80s, and a lot of people were playing. A lot of people were playing Yamaha, and a lot of people were playing, um, you know, to be real, a lot of people were playing Yamaha in the '80s, especially
Yep.
here in New Orleans. And I was like, yeah, but that doesn't sound like my favorite records. Like, that doesn't sound like Elvin Jones. That
Right.
doesn't sound like Art Blakey. That doesn't sound like Tony Williams. That doesn't sound like Philly Joe Jones. And then I started to realize, like, oh, all of those guys play Gretsch. Like, when you hit a 12-inch rack tom, a 12-inch Gretsch rack tom that is tuned well, there is no other sound that even comes close. And so my first time that I actually got to do that in person with a Gretsch 12-inch rack tom, I was like, well, this is the sound I've been looking for my entire life. And it costs what? Well, it doesn't matter what it costs. We're just going to do it. We have to do it. And so but I was like well into my 20s at that point. Where I was like, it doesn't matter what it costs. Just let's freaking do it. This is what I'm doing for the rest of my life, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to play Gretsch, and then you start to realize, oh, Charlie Watts plays Gretsch. Levon Helm played Gretsch in his early career. It's like, this makes total sense. It's like, Charlie Watts gave a Gretsch kit to Zigaboo Motorlees, the drummer for the Meters.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. So there are pictures of Zig and a Gretsch kit. So for me, I was like, all right, because luckily I've been very lucky to make really good friends and have great teachers and great mentors. So as I was coming up, some of my people that I met, they told me, look, play what you would play if you had all the money in the world and you could afford to buy whatever you want to buy. Don't go after free stuff. Just pick your dream brands and stick with that and grow with them. And that's what I did. And I was like, I'm just gonna play Gretsch. And so when I did my first Modern Drummer festival, I played a 1960s Gretsch kit, 12, 14, 18, that I bought with my own money. And then after I did that, then it was like, hey, would you like to play Gretsch? It's like, of course I would. But I played that kit with my own means. I played what I loved from the beginning, and then the companies come to you. So we can go into that, but endorsements and all that kind of stuff. It's like, decide what you're going to play for the rest of your life, and then play that, buy it if you have to, and then if you're good enough, the company will want to work with you. Now it's all about trying to get free stuff. It's like, that's not the way to go about it.
No, I agree. Like you, I had a moment where I hit some Gretsch drums. I drove all around Toronto to every drum shop and went, it's not the sound I hear in my head. And in the cymbal testing room in the now defunct Toronto Percussion Center, I hit this little Gretsch kit and went, that's it. I literally went and said, okay, take my money, but I have to pay it off over 3 months.
And that's it. It's not about the financial. It's about that connection. And it's like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what gives me joy. This is what makes me happy. How do we make this happen? And then you figure it out.
That's right. And I bought, man, I've had many Gretsch kits over the years, and it's great to be an artist as well. And I have, because we are just getting back to work up here in Canada. So next year, I will be ordering something brand new. I've never ordered a brand new Gretsch kit exactly the sizes and finish that I want, and I'm going to do it next year.
Do it. Treat yourself. It's an amazing feeling. It's incredible.
Yeah. And
And
so
then
you,
the factory, you're gonna.
yes, I've
It's
been
like,
there. That's incredible. That factory tour, man, my face hurt. I was in there 45 minutes and Paul Cooper gave us the tour, and it was just like I couldn't believe it. Man.
yeah,
Anyway, phenomenal. And I love your videos. I'm loving the Swamp Dog video, the 8x14 Gretsch drum tune, low, medium, and high. Man, you recording those in your studio? Is that where you're doing those?
I am. Yeah. So Galactic has a studio just a mile from my house where I'm at right now, and I took over what was kind of a storage room, and I just started making it a little bit more organized. And then I started realizing, oh, I could set up some drums, and oh, I could film in here. And so I started filming in there, and recording, and I've just upgraded as we've gone along. And I recently, like 2 years ago, bought my own cameras and my own, I had okay interfaces, but I got really good Universal Apollo 8P interfaces, because I was like, if I'm going to do this, as we get to know each other, you'll learn that I'm like, if I'm going to do this, then let's do this right. And what does it cost? Well, that's what it costs, but we're going to do it right.
Yeah.
And we'll figure it out later. So that's what I've done. And the room itself is it's just a storage room above our road gear warehouse.
Wow. It
And
looks great. Sounds great.
Make it look good, but and sound good, but it's not pretty. There's no curb appeal. Let me say that. But I try to make it look and sound good to the best as I can. And eventually I'll do some videos on that. Like you don't need a fancy place. Like all you need to do is make it good. And there's literally a plywood floor and paneling walls, and I've covered the walls with drapes, and I've covered the floors with cheap rugs. And then
Wow.
and I hired a videographer at first, and then and now I bought my own cameras. And Nick Solnick, who was another drummer, I just started asking around, like, who can help me do this? And a couple of my students were like, yeah, I don't know anything about video. And then Nick was like, yeah, I don't know anything about video, but I would be willing to learn. I was like, I'll pay you by the hour, and I will forgive the learning curve. Like, and
Right.
and he has learned so much, and now he helps me stream, and we and now he gets paid a lot to go work for other people to do streams. So
Wow.
so it's really cool. It's like I never thought that I'd be like creating jobs and training people, but that's what I'm doing, and I love that. It's like, wow, it's like I'm a business owner. But it started off with, I mean, if we want to talk about this, because we are on a drum
Sure.
podcast, it's like, all I wanted to do was play the drums, and then I realized, oh wow, I guess this is a recurring theme. If I'm going to do something, I want to do it really well.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I want to play the drums, but then I started my parents asked me, where do you want to go to high school? And so I said, I want to go to whichever high school has the best drum line. And so
Wow.
we didn't know what that was, but come to find out, it was Brother Martin, because Marty Hurley was the drum instructor there. So I get there, and I'm like, yay, I want to play drums. And then I get there in 8th grade, and I realize there's all these other dudes coming and going, and it's like, whoa, that dude I just heard him break down a double stroke roll on the Formica table in front of Marty Hurley. Marty Hurley's like, let me check out your roll because you're going to an audition next week and I want to make sure this shit's right. So, all of that was just happening every day. And, for a high school, we had a very killing drum line with a lot of killer players that Marty had taught. And, Marty Hurley was the drum line instructor for Phantom Regiment's Drum and Bugle Corps, which in Ontario, Canada, I realize you guys might not know who that is, but in the DCI Drum Corps International world, Phantom Regiment is a definite player in that world. And I was just like, dumb luck.
Wow.
I got to have Marty Hurley as my drum teacher. It's ridiculous. I'm just like one of the luckiest guys in the world that I was born into a household where my parents were like, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to play drums. Where do you want to go to high school? I want to go wherever there's the best drum line. Okay, well, we'll find out. We don't know what that is, but we'll find out what that is. So we did. And then I got there and I was like, oh, wait a minute. I want to play drums, but I want to play drums well. And Marty was like, well, it's going to take a hell of a lot of work. And so my parents were willing to give me private lessons with Marty. And
Wow.
so I realized that I was terrible. I was awful. And I realized how much work it was going to take. So Marty's like, well, if you're willing to do the work, I'll show you, but you're going to have to work. And I did. And I would show up early, like 6:30, 7 a.m. to take my private lessons with him. And I went from I did not make the drum line in my freshman year. It's a long story. I won't go into all that, but I did not make the drum line in my freshman year. And I decided this sucks. And I said, screw this. I'm going to become one of the best. And Marty was like, well, that's going to take a hell of a lot of work. And so, long story short, I was the drum captain, won All-State by my senior year.
Wow.
And then I was like, I'm going to take this and I'm going to keep working. I'm going to become one of the best in the world. And, that's arguable, but I work hard and to do what I can. And so, I'm just very fortunate that I've gotten to study with some true masters. Marty was a master teacher. And if you don't believe me, ask Jeff Prospery, John Wooten, and all the other masters who have studied with Marty. So, I just feel very fortunate on that. And so you're asking me about the beginning. That was the beginning. And then as I got older, into senior year of high school, I realized, okay, cool. Thank you, Marty, for teaching me all of this, but this is not what I want to do with my life. I want to play drums because of the way it makes me feel. I want to feel that feeling that I felt when I was 3 years old of the drums coming down the street. And you're just like, holy crap, this is the most amazing thing in the world. So I wanted to play drum set. And so Marty was like, okay, cool. Like, just do it. Do what I'm asking you to do on my drum line, the way I'm asking you to do it. And then you can go do whatever you want. And so by senior year of high school, I was going out and listening to music almost every night and hearing guys like Russell Batiste, Johnny Vodakovich, Herlin Riley, Shannon Powell. And I realized that is giving me the feeling that I had as a kid. And that's what I want to do with my life. And then I had to realize, well, to do that, you're going to have to loosen up a whole hell of a lot.
Right.
So then I started loosening up. And I started studying with Marty Hurley. Started studying with Johnny Vodakovich. And then during that process, loosening up, And then after I graduated from high school, going back and seeing Marty and playing for Marty, he's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Are you trying to win an ugly hands competition?" Because I was like, just like super trying to play super loose, and that was a process of going back and forth. And so now eventually I've gotten to a point where I can play loose in a controlled way. And I started teaching at LSU, and as a challenge to myself, I was like, I want to play with the drum line. I want to play two cadences, one of them written by Marty Hurley.
Wow.
Well, the leader of the drum line at the time didn't get the memo, and he sent me three cadences. So I was like, okay, no problem. But the third cadence is through composed, and that doesn't repeat at all. And I was like, I'm not going to read this. I want to memorize this. And you can ask my wife. I spent months like practicing on countertops.
Yeah.
Even when we went on vacation, I was still, she's like, what are you doing? I was like, you don't understand. Like, I set myself, I told him I was going to do this, and there's a date to film it. I've got to know these cadences. And it was like an awesome learning experience. I mean, I got my hands, like, I really had to get my hands together, back together, and then memorize that stuff. So, I love setting challenges for myself that, to do stuff like that. And I did it. It's up on YouTube if anybody wants to see it. But
Oh man, yeah, for sure. I'd love to see that.
Talk about a mountain to climb. It's like, why am I doing this to myself in my late 40s?
How long is the piece? Awesome. How long is that piece?
I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I think it's like 6 or 7 minutes to play through it all. Maybe that I'm exaggerating, but it's three cadences.
Nuts.
And to memorize it took me a long time. But my point of mentioning all that is, like, I think it's good to challenge yourself, even if you're, established in your career. It's like, I don't think that way. I try to think like I'm 19 years old always. And I'm trying to learn Elvin Jones transcriptions and Philly Joe Jones transcriptions and LSU cadences. Like, I challenge myself all the time. I try to treat myself like I'm a beginner all the time. I'm like, what are we going to learn now?
That's amazing. You can't afford. Tony Williams did that. A lot of the great Gretsch artists of the past, they did that. They pushed forward the instrument, certainly by being lazy. That's amazing. Yeah. Your work ethic is unbelievable, and it seems every so often I'd see, oh, there's something else Stanton's put out here. There's some more new stuff. Holy moly. And new projects and new things. And I was 100% correct, and I knew I was, that your success is due very much in part because you work your tail off.
1,000,000%. And I totally agree with that. I'm just lucky. Well, I don't know if I would say lucky. It's, for people who are watching this, I want a takeaway to be, if you want something, you can achieve it. You're just going to have to work your butt off for it. And if you're willing to work for it, the people who can help you get there will appear. You've got to put yourself out there, and you've got to do the work. And I think that people watching this, they care enough to be willing to do the work. So there have been a lot of times where I've asked myself, like, geez, Pete, is what I'm trying to achieve worth all this work? And the answer is yes. It's like, once you actually achieve it and you think back on it, I think the thing is you got to figure out a way to enjoy the work, enjoy practicing, enjoy, if you're playing gigs, figure out a way to enjoy load in, enjoy setting up. You
Right.
know, it's like I I remember walking up to Brian Blade after he played with, I think he played with either Herbie. It was either Herbie Hancock or Wayne Shorter at the New Orleans Jazz Festival, and he was tearing down his own drums, and he just played like the highlight set of the Jazz Festival, and he said, I said, man, you still tearing down your own stuff? He said, oh yeah, it's therapeutic for me.
Right. I get that. Yeah.
So, and that's beautiful. I realized it's not therapeutic for me. Well, I have somebody help me, and that's okay too. So I don't like setting up and tearing down, and it's okay to admit that. I like working my ass off. I like waking up at 5:30 in the morning. I will wake up at 5:30 in the morning and practice, or study a business course, or answer email, or do things that I need to do to get me to the next step. But I've also realized I don't like editing video. I don't like uh, the being in front of the computer to do recording. I don't like setting up and tearing down. And I've battled myself with that for a long time. But now I'm like, that's okay. It's okay to admit what you like and admit what you don't like, and then hire people to help you do the stuff that you don't like so that you can focus more on the stuff that you do like.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, my job is, yeah, playing the drums. Okay. But why do I play the drums? I play the drums because of the joy that it brings me, because of the joy that it brought me as a kid. And if I lose sight of that, then I
Yeah.
won't be doing my job very well. So I look at myself as, yes, I'm a drummer, but I'm a joy provider. And that's what I try to do, is I try to play music to share in the joy that I feel and share that with people. And that might help somebody get through a rough day, might help somebody celebrate an anniversary, might help somebody have a good time and just forget about what's going on in their life. But that's my job. And I've learned through COVID that people need that. And I'm happy to do it.
You have a glow and a vibe when you play. You have this, you just emanate this joy when you play. I think years ago, I remember seeing you for the first time and went, okay, who is this cat? Who is this guy? I'm just watching you play. I'm like, man, you just emanated that love. You could totally tell that you were in the moment. You love it. You know, it gets to be a bit of a tough grind at times. You know, being a musician, we wear many hats. But that for me as well is also the happy place when I sit down. And as soon as I whack those toms or hit that snare drum and play with that note with the bass player, it's like, man, at the end of a long travel day, you're like, here we go. This is good to
There we
play
go.
time. It's fun. It's serious, but it's serious fun, right?
Serious fun. Yes. I
What were
can
you
agree.
playing? What were you playing? What kind of music when you decided, okay, you're going to play the drum set, you were out seeing people. What were your first kind of musical situations like?
That's a great question. So, as a young kid, I was drawn to high energy music, right? So, I was drawn to things like punk rock. I went to punk rock shows, and on record, I was listening to a lot of classic rock. And a lot of my friends had older brothers or parents who had Led Zeppelin records, Black Sabbath records, Deep Purple records. And so I was listening to a lot of that. And I didn't know this at the time, but I didn't realize that all those drummers were from the UK. And all those drummers
Hmm.
were getting their inspiration from early rock and roll. The drummer on a
Right.
lot of early rock and roll is Earl Palmer from New Orleans. So I didn't realize that. I'm listening to all this like heavy classic rock, psychedelic classic rock, I mean, John Bonham, there are interviews where he talks about Earl Palmer. We all know he took that intro to rock and roll. That was actually Charles Connor playing drums on that, but that's Little Richard. And Earl Palmer was the drummer on a lot of the Little Richard stuff. So I started to realize that I was lucky to be born in New Orleans, the place that is the foundation of all my favorite music. So I was drawn to heavy classic rock. I would go see punk rock because there was a lot of punk rock happening live in New Orleans. But I realized I want to do this well. I want to be one of the best. So who were the best in town? Herlin Riley, Shannon Powell, Johnny Vodakovich, and then everybody talked about James Black, and he was on by the time that I started making the scene. But what did these guys play? They were swinging out and playing music that, for lack of a better word, we would call jazz.
Right.
And so I was like, I need to learn how to do that. So started showing up, going to hear Johnny Vodakovich, Herlin Riley, Shannon Powell, and then they started letting me sit in, and I was terrible.
Wow.
So I was like, I'm still working on that. You know, I'm pretty good at hitting the drums real hard and playing some grooves, but I'm still working on swinging out and being a great musician, a better musician every day. Like, you can always become a better musician, and that's what's so wonderful and daunting about this path that we choose. There is no end to it.
Right.
And so that's why I wake up every morning and it's like, keep working, keep practicing, keep working, and try to enjoy it, I went out last night and heard Pedro, like I was saying, Pedro Segundo. It was his own gig at Snug Harbor. He's a masterful percussionist. If people don't know his name yet, you are going to hear his name. This guy is unbelievably wonderful as an artist.
Wow.
Just, like, he blends percussion and drum set like nobody I've ever seen.
Wow.
And speaking of Gretsch, and one of our Gretsch brothers, Mark Schulman,
Yes,
came into New Orleans, and he's done your
yes, he has. Yep.
So Mark came into New Orleans. He reached out to me, and we went out 2 nights. Both nights he was here. We went out together. And on the second night, I took him to hear Pedro, and his mind, it was blown. He was like, I've seen a lot of guys doing that, for lack of a better description, like a hybrid between set and percussion. And what Pedro does, like, I'm not even going to try to describe it because it's just like, you got to see it. It's like, it's unbelievable. He swings as hard as anybody, and yet he also picks up a percussion, a tambourine, and can play pandero on a gospel tambourine, and then switch hands and play New Orleans tambourine while playing brushes. It's the most musical, beautiful thing. And I love that. I love having my mind blown.
Yeah.
Musically. So I went out and saw Pedro last night, and then went and saw Ivan Neville last night.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. It's like, yes, you have to do the work, but you also have to enjoy it. Because if you don't enjoy it, and you're playing music and it comes across as
right,
serious drudgery, Like, who wants to see that? Like, people don't want to hear music to experience pain. They want they want they want to experience joy. So you got to remember that. Like, yes, this is a lot of work, but you also have to figure out a way to enjoy it.
You're right. I know that it was. I started playing drums later in life, and at nearly 19, which was super old, and I didn't realize that. I didn't care, but I fell in love with the work and fell in love with the process of it. I had a great teacher named Jim Blackley. He said the first lesson said, "Son, if I could give it to you all right now, I would, but it's a process, and be kind to yourself." And just day by day, you just grow and you got better. Did you study formally any jazz stuff with people, or was it from seeing cats and playing? Was it a good blend of both?
I would say, yeah, it's a good blend of both. I mean, I definitely had formal
Mhm.
rudimental training with Marty Hurley. And then I don't think there's anything formal about studying with Johnny Vodakovich. So, Johnny is the easiest way. There's no easy way, but maybe the clearest way to describe Johnny is, for those people who know who Johnny is, they understand. But Johnny is like he is like a Jedi master. I mean, Johnny is the closest thing to Yoda that I've ever experienced. And you know, you don't have to take my word for it. Talk to Brian Blade. You know,
Right.
Brian Blade. You ask Brian Blade, who do you learn how to play the drums from, and he'll tell you Johnny Vodakovich. and, and I'm just lucky enough that I got to learn how to play drums from Johnny too. So Johnny is not. There are no books involved. There are no exercises involved. Uh, Johnny will sit down and listen to you and try to hear what you want to do, and then he'll try to help you get there. And
Incredible.
there's no formal way to do that. So Johnny will hand you a pair of brushes and then put on a Bach concerto and walk to the kitchen
Come on.
and say, I'm gonna go make myself a cappuccino. Would you like one?
What do you do, right?
And that's literally how the lessons with Johnny start. And
That's
it's like,
awesome.
and then he'll put on a record. He did this to me. He put on a record of him playing with Professor Longhair, and he handed me some sticks, and he said, "See what you can come up with. Listen to this beat." And he walked to the kitchen, and I listened to the record. And I'm like, "Holy crap! This is amazingly funky." Like, so the record is Crawfish Fiesta, right? With Johnny Vodakovich on drums, and to this day, that record is a bible for me. Like,
Wow.
it, it's every snare drum funk groove that I play. It's like, I'm just gonna be honest. I got it from Johnny, and then try to do my own thing with it. But that's where it's coming from, and he'll tell you he got it from 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 all the cats that he watched: Smokey Johnson, Earl Palmer, Ernie Ellie, all black American musicians from New Orleans.
Man.
And Johnny got to learn from them, and then I got to learn from Johnny, and then I started seeking those guys out. So I would go watch Ernie Ellie. I would go watch, I got to meet Earl Palmer.
Wow.
And Earl came to one of my gigs. That'll take an hour to tell that story, but that's the thing, man. Is you gotta dig deep. Don't just start with, oh, I like this. Like, find out where that came from,
Yeah.
and then invariably, once you start digging deeper, it all came from Black American musicians,
Right.
drummers, and all can be traced back to Africa.
Yeah.
And so you have to start digging deep and be able to trace it to me. If you want to be serious on this instrument, you
I
need to
love the
trace.
history of it. I love that. That's great. I love going back and reading all from Baby Dodds, Zutty Singleton, all those cats. I love going back and doing research on them. And there's so much good stuff that you can find online about the really the founding fathers of the instrument.
Yeah,
It's
and yeah, and me too. I love that. And what's amazing is that I can still go out on any given night. Tonight I'm going to go hear Herlin Riley, and
oh,
Herlin Riley will tell you about his uncle. And his
oh
uncle, he learned how to play drums from his uncle, and his uncle got to hang out with guys like Baby Dodds and Judy Singleton. And,
come
you know,
on.
so yeah, it's incredible. That's why I'm never going to leave New Orleans. It's like, how could I? It's like
Right.
it,
And why would
it,
you?
it's
You know.
it's the epicenter. I mean, a lot of people know this. A lot of people don't. That there is no evidence that says that the drum set did not start in New Orleans.
Well,
So
yeah, it
I'm
would
not.
make sense, right?
New Orleans is the birthplace of the drum set.
Man, you were meant to do this, right? You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
then coupled with the Gretsch heritage, and what a perfect marriage, your musical career and in history, along with the 135 years of Gretsch. Man, this is
I know.
awesome.
I'm very, very grateful. I was born in the right place at the right time to study with some true masters and have some masters that studied with masters and I just feel very, very blessed and grateful and fortunate.
Man, I've got to get down there. Can we talk about the Galactic, how things started with Galactic? That's a long time ago. 27 years, I think it is now. To tell us about that.
Yeah, we absolutely. I mean, all of this that I'm talking about, I love all of this so very much. And what do you do as a 19-year-old, 20-year-old kid? Like, how do you start playing? It's like, to be honest with you, I wasn't good enough to play the gigs that Herlin Riley, Shannon Powell, and Johnny Vodakovich were playing. So what did I do? I started playing with my friends. And so my friends and I had a band called Galactic Prophylactic. And we started
Right. Oh,
around town. And then we realized that we weren't going to get very far. The name like Galactic Prophylactic. So we changed the name to Galactic and we released our first record in 1996. And we were like, well, if we're going to do anything with this, we're going to have to go on the road. So we bought my parents' 1978 Ford Econoline van
oh
in
man.
1996. That van was almost 20 years old. And and we took that van up the West Coast first and then came home and then took it up the East Coast. I mean, we were calling clubs ourselves. Like we were mailing CDs at the
Yep.
time. We were mailing CDs to clubs and asking them for a gig. And we would piece together a tour. And eventually a booking agent reached out to us and said, hey, we like what y'all are doing. Y'all need a booking agent. And then a manager reached out to us. Hey, we like what y'all are doing. Y'all need a manager. And we stayed on the road. In the beginning, we were doing almost 200 dates a year.
Wow.
Over 25 years, we averaged 100 dates a year
That's a lot
until
of playing. Yep.
yeah,
Wow.
a lot, until COVID. And we made a name for ourselves, and I've made a name for myself. And a lot of times during, I would say, like, maybe the late 2000s into 2010s. During that period, I was calling drum shops ahead of time and offering to do a drum clinic in between sound check and the gig.
Oh man.
So one year I did 40 drum clinics like that in between sound check and the gig. So, it's work. But I
That,
didn't get where I am just by willing it to be. It's like I would
oh,
literally finish sound check, and as we're talking about, like, okay, so the end of that song, everybody's clear. The end of that song, we're gonna tag it 3 times, right? Yes, and I'm spinning my wing nuts on the cymbal. I take the cymbals off, put them in the bag, and put them in my trap case, and go to a drum clinic, and then put my cymbals up. So I always have my cymbals, my snare, my pandero, my cowbell, and my stick bag, and that lives in a trap case. And so if I'm playing a festival, the shells and the hardware are there, and I put my cymbals, snare, pandero, and I've got my cowbell and my sticks. And so no matter if it's my kit or if it's a kit at a clinic or if it's a kit at a festival, I always have the same cymbals, snare, pandero, and cowbell and stick bag. And I've traveled all over the world like that. That's what I do. And those are the things that are personal that make help me sound like me. But I can tune the drums. You can't
right.
you can't bring the drums with you everywhere. So that's how I've been doing it. And yeah, before COVID, man, it was one year that I did 40, and then other years I've done a bunch, but not quite as many as 40.
That's what do you cover at your clinics?
So that's a great question, and now I've written so many lessons and filmed so many lessons for my academy. Not to give myself a shameless plug, but if anybody's interested in the way that I present
It's cool.
drum information, I do have my own online drum school, Stanton Moore Drum Academy.com, if anybody wants to check it out. So doing all of that, I have so much curriculum, so much material. I taught myself how to, well, Mark Wessels, who is now
Yeah. Yeah.
the education director
Mhm.
of Vic Firth. He and I became friends, and he really helped teach me finale. And so I started laying out my own books in finale, my own lessons, which will eventually become books. And now over COVID, Mark and a friend of mine, Sean Gilmore, have helped teach me InDesign. So now I take the finale notation and I import it into InDesign. So I've got books and books and books ready to go. Because I wrote 2 books and did the first one with Sandy Feldstein,
Yeah.
another mentor. Like, I can't believe, it's like I pinch myself, man, of the people that I've gotten to work with. It's incredible. And so my first book I did with Sandy, and my second book I did with Hudson. And both of those books, I was like, if I'm going to write a book, I want to do it really, really well. And as we get to know each other, you're going to learn that about me. It's like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it really, really well. So before I even wrote the book, before I even put it out, I was like, I wanted to win Book of the Year in Modern Drummer. And my publishers were like, well, that's a very lofty goal. We hope that you achieve that. That would be great. And both books, I won Book of the Year. And I'm not saying that to to brag or anything. I'm just saying that when I do something, I try to do it as best as I possibly can. And so with my academy, I write all the time. So instead of releasing it as books, I release it on the academy.
Cool.
So when I do a clinic, what do I present? And that was the question. And so I literally got to a point on clinics where I just walk up and maybe I'd play a little bit, play a solo, maybe play a play along, and then I would literally just say, I'm not here to present an agenda to you guys. You guys are here because you want to know something, I would hope. And if you want to know anything that I have to offer, I'm here for you. So what do y'all want to know? And I just start that way. And sometimes people would ask about my buzz rules, or people would ask about a certain sticking, or people would ask about a certain record that I did, or a galactic gig that they saw, and what were you playing? Or they might ask me about the Pondero. They might, so any of those topics can set me up to talk for 30 minutes. So I like doing clinics like that. Literally, I'll start off with a question. It's like, what do you want to know? And then after the first question always comes a little slow because everybody's a little nervous. But then once somebody asks a question, then everybody feels more comfortable. And I love clinics being a conversation.
Yes.
My wife loves to talk about this. I can talk all day long, especially if I'm sitting behind the drums, so just tell me what you want to hear about. I don't want to talk all day long about something where everybody's like, yeah, well, we know this. We saw this on YouTube. Well, yeah, bro, I subscribed to your academy. I already saw this. So I want to know what people want to know about, And I love doing clinics like that. To me, it's just a group conversation.
Agreed. We had a great comment from fellow Gretch artist Charlie Cooley up here in the Toronto area. He wanted to know if there's any plans to visit Toronto, any kind of gigs coming up in the next while, Stanton?
So that's a great question. And I don't think that we have anything on the books right now for Toronto. We have been working diligently to book all the stuff that we lost in 2020.
Yeah.
So, we just the other day finally made public what all of our dates are for February and March.
Nice.
Which is a lot. And I don't think Toronto's on there, but we love Toronto and we definitely want it. We want to make it up there. And when we do, I have to have you come. But you're in Ontario.
Yes. Yep. I'm 90 minutes north of Toronto.
Yeah. So, we love coming to Canada. And when we do, hopefully y'all will know about it. And I'll make sure that I'll let you know about it.
Yeah. We'll keep an eye out for sure to come and see you. A question that I have for you is, not being from New Orleans. Hey, I said it right. There's a mystique about how to play a second line groove. And I probably still don't play it very well. Could you give us some insight on how to play a second line groove well, rather than something that you're reading out of a book that sounds like I'm reading out of a book?
Yeah, 1,000,000%. So the most important thing about playing second line and about playing any groove, in my opinion, is understanding where that groove lies in between straight and in between swing. So, I'm right here at my desk, right? So on my desk, right? And you can see I've got my computer resting on a Gretch rack tone.
That's awesome.
This is my micro kit that I keep in my office. We moved less than a year ago, so my office is still a work in progress. So my computer is on my new desk on top of a rack tone. Okay, so check this out. In between straight and swing. Here's straight, right? Okay, now I'm going to move in between the spectrum and I'm going to go into in between straight and I'm going to go all the way over to swing, and then I'm going to move that pass swing into
Wow.
play, and then back. So check it out. Here's in between.
Oh,
Now here's swing. Now I'm playing flams, but the whole time my right finger is staying steady.
the subdivision.
Okay, so the right hand is playing straight eights. Okay, 1 and 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And then the left hand, right there, that was pretty straight. Right, that's straight. Now in between. Right, in between again. Now here's swing. Okay, so understanding that is paramount.
Yeah.
It's all about the feel. It's not about the notes that you play. It's about that feel. So right now, I'm gonna play. Let's just play Hey Pocky Way, right? Which is just the 3 side of the clave, okay? But it's got to be in between straight and swing. So. Now this should make people want to dance.
Oh man, this is awesome.
Right? The whole goal of that is to make people get up, dance, and feel something.
That's
Hopefully
awesome.
it's joy. Right? Now, if I were going to play that, play a two swing, and then I'm going to rush it a little bit, right? I'm going to play ahead and play 2 swing. That's awful. That's terrible. Terrible. So the trick is make sure that your 8th notes get true value. So you can lock these 8 notes into a click. Beep, bop, 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 beep, bop. And then your E's and Ah's have to be in between straight and swing.
Oh man.
So I'm using my wedding ring.
Yeah.
I'm using my fist on my desk to get a sound. It's not about. I mean, as much as I love Gretsch drums, it's not about the gear. It's about the feeling. And can you take what you feel inside of you and communicate that to somebody else? And technically, to do that with a second line, it's got to be in between straight and swing.
What's the relation to that and clave for people who are just...
Glad you asked. So, Hey Pocky Way is the 3 side of the clave, right? It's just the 3 side. Boom, boom. Okay. Now, just there at the end, I started to go into the 2 side. So here's the 3 side of the clave. Bop, 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 boom. Okay. Now, 2, 3 would be boom. Okay, that's the 2, 3 side. In New Orleans, as everybody knows now, we are below sea level. So we round things out. So the clave goes from this to this boom boom take it again, a boom, boom.
Oh man.
Right?
That's awesome.
Whatever you put in there, the rhythmic structure that I'm feeling is that modified clave. Boom, a boom, boom, a boom, boom. So I would call that more of a traditional New Orleans second, right? And that'll work for Saints Go Marching In, Little Liza Jane, Down by the Riverside, right? Any of those songs. Now, some of the more modern stuff, like Hey Pockway or Do What You Wanna, those songs rely more on just the 3 side of the clave, right? Hey Pockway, hey Pockway, hey Pockway, hey Pockway, do what you wanna, Mardi Gras morning, do what you wanna, Mardi Gras morning, right? So those songs rely more on the 3 side, you know. Ding, 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 Little Liza Jane. Bang, bum, bum, bum. 2, 3, clave. Bang, dun, dun, go. Dun, dun. Right? So
That's insane.
But what's the constant is it's got to be in between straight and swing. If I were to swing that too much, it would sound awful.
Right.
If I were to play it too straight, here, let's check it out. I'm gonna play it too straight. Little Liza Jane. Ba da da da. Little Liza Jane. I'm gonna play it terrible. That's awful. I don't even want to do it. So it's all about understanding the nuance of playing in between straight and swing. And that is something that all of the great groove drummers understand innately. Yeah. Everybody from Clyde Stubblefield, Jabo Starks, John Bonham, Steve Jordan. Steve Jordan understands that and talks about it at length. And, you know, Steve, as everybody knows, is playing Gretsch now with the Rolling Stones tour. So in homage to Charlie Watts, he's playing Gretsch with the Stones. You know, I didn't even think about that when I mentioned Steve. It's like, oh yeah, Gretsch is everywhere.
Right. It seems more now than everywhere. Lucas actually has a question for you.
Awesome. Hi, Lucas. What's up, brother?
He wrote me this earlier. So he said, you've mentioned, Stanton, in interviews about your love of timeless things. What do you mean by that? And what are some examples of the timeless things that you love?
That's a great question. So what I mean by that is things that are classic, things that are not a fad or not trendy. So things that have stood the test of time, things that are classics. So Gretsch is a classic, and we can talk at length about this. But in late 58, 59, in the late 1950s, Gretsch started shifting to a 6-ply shell. That is a combination of maple and gum, maybe sometimes poplar. But that Paul Cooper knows this better than me, so I'm gonna leave that up to Paul for y'all to discuss. But the point is that the recipe has remained the same since the 1950s, the late 50s, into the 60s. So the shell that you hear Elvin Jones playing on Love the Queen, the shell that you hear Tony Williams playing on all the Miles Davis records, Nefertiti and ESP, and all these records that Tony's playing with Miles on, the shell that all the drummers from the early '60s on, Charlie Watts with the Rolling Stones, it's the same shell configuration as today, USA Custom. So it hasn't changed. The die-cast tube and the shell recipe is the same. So every other drum company comes out with, this new Babinga thing, this new wood that somebody dug out of somewhere. It's like, that's cute, but what are some of the best drum sounds on record? Elvin, Tony, and those, as we talked about, that 12-inch tom, man, there's nothing like that. And that sound, don't mess with it. And it's timeless. It's classic. When you hear Art Blakey or Philly Joe or Elvin or Tony go to a 12-inch tom, it hits you like this, still to this day. And all the other musical trends and processing and loops and electronic filters that are put on things, that's cool. That's great. Hey, a reverse gated snare drum from the 80s, cool. That's cool. And that's coming back in style. That's cool. But guess what has always been in style? Black frame glasses, Gretsch shells, black t-shirt. It's like these things are timeless. That's what I'm talking about. I would rather be classic than current. You're gonna run yourself ragged trying to be current. I'm just gonna go with classic, and that's why I love Gretsch. Gretsch is classic. You can't mess with it.
And that is what a beautiful answer. Thank you. We have another question from Sharon Ransom. She has a question. She just wondered if it was asked already. The original reason for choosing Gretsch, we did talk about this as well. What are your favorite kits from Gretsch? We actually maybe blend that into maybe repeating kind of why you chose Gretsch, and then what series of Gretsch are you playing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, a lot of my kits are USA Custom. I have 3 kits from the 60s. I have a 12, 14, 18 round badge kit from the early 60s. It's like, I don't know why I don't set that up in the studio more. I think I'm going to have to stop doing that. So, I also have a 12, 14, 20 from the mid-60s, a 13, 16, 22 from the mid-60s. And all of those are champagne sparkling. And then, and the 12, 14, 18 has been recovered, and it's Bermuda sand. But,
beautiful.
That was the available champagne sparkle at the time. I've got a 70s kit that I bought off eBay that I sent directly to Sam Bacco. Sam Bacco helped me. It didn't need to be recovered. It had been recovered, but it was a sloppy job. So Sam helped me clean up that recovering job, and Fred Gretsch gave me new matching slanted 8 badges. So it had mismatched badges, had some stop sign, had some square. And the kit, though, is, get this, it's red glass, red sparkle glass, right? Red glass sparkle. But get this, the sizes are 13, 14, 16, 18, and it came with a 22. And Paul Cooper made me a 26 from the vintage. San Baco cleaned it all up, and the insides were sloppily painted, and they made me some beautiful interior labels.
Okay.
That kit is like my pride and joy, and it's so awesome that I played it for a while in my studio, and then I've kind of like put it aside for a minute. I need to break that kit out again because it's just ridiculous. So what I played when I played that kit, I played 14 up, 16, 18, 26, and bottom sizes in a red glass glitter.
Oh, beautiful.
70s Gretch kit. It's unbelievable. And then since I got my endorsement in the early 2000s, I got a walnut shell bank, 10, 12, 13, 14, 16, bass drums, 18, 20, 26. And that was my first endorsement kit. And then I got a, Twilight glass glitter.
Oh, beautiful.
Steve Maxwell came up with that name. I told Paul Cooper what I wanted. I was like, it's like this gray glass glitter.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have it available. I went to the Gretsch factory, and Paul found a swatch of it on a table. He's like, is this what you're talking about? I was like, yeah, that. He's like, oh. He's like, well, we don't have this available yet, but we can get it. I can do you a kit. So we did, and Steve Maxwell came up with the name Twilight Glass Glitter. And it's
That was
available.
a finish. That was an early 60s finish that was replaced by the orange glass or tangerine glass. I had a Starlight Sparkle kit.
Yeah. So it's not exactly Starlight. So Steve came up with the name Twilight, I think.
Okay.
We call it Twilight Glass Glitter. And
wow.
so I have that kit, and that at the time they were doing the slanted 8 badge. And
Okay.
I've got that in 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 26 bass drums. And then after that, I wanted to do, they were just about to announce the round badge. That they were doing round badge.
Yeah.
And they sent me they sent me 3 swatches. The product manager at the time sent me 3 swatches, and I went with the darkest one, and that is now Ruby Red Oyster.
Okay.
So Ruby Red Oyster, I think that's the name of it. And that's the kit that's in my studio right now. And I've got a 10, 2 12s, 2 14s, a 16, 18, 20, 27. And the reason I got 2 is because I'll do a 12, 14, 18 tuned higher when I'm playing more of my trio gigs. And then a 12, 14, 16, 20 with a 26 tuned more thumping, more impact for funk and other things. But both of those are in Ruby Red.
Beautiful.
And of course, I've got a few other things too. But those are some of my prize kits. And right now, like I've got a micro kit in my office right now.
Mm.
I'll show you. It's like my office is a mess. But
wow.
Right over here, I've got my micro kit stacked because I had to build my desk. So my micro kit is over here in the corner, and then I've got a Brooklyn Cream Oyster on the road with Galactic right now. 12, 14, 16, 20, and a 26. I've got a Broadcaster, which is Anniversary Sparkle. 12, 14, 16, 18, and a 20. So yeah, I'm very fortunate that Gretsch takes incredibly good care me and my drum passion.
Wow, that is unbelievable. One other question here we have. Room condensers only. What kind of recordings do you do? Close mic as well as have overheads. What's your protocol there?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And in my studio, I'm an Audix endorser, and I use Audix D6s on my
Mm-hmm.
four tones, on my bass drum, and on my Pondero. I use an Audix D2 on my rack tom. I got them a long time ago, maybe like 15 years ago now. Audix CX111s as my overheads, and I use an Audix i5 on my snare.
Okay.
So that's the nuts and bolts of what I'm using. I use a micro D on my mini timbales and all that kind of stuff. But that's most of what I'm using. And I try to keep my studio set up just to where I can walk in and we can just sit down, and any style of music, anything I need to do, I can just sit down and start playing. And if I'm doing a live Zoom masterclass, or if I'm doing I did my whole camp, 3 days, 9:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. from my studio virtually in 2020, in December of 2020. I'm able to do it in person this year coming up. Thank goodness.
Cool.
But I try to keep my studio just like ready to walk in. Me and my engineer, Nick Solnick. So if I was doing more of a piano trio recording, I probably wouldn't close mic all the time.
Right.
And I would do different overheads, and it'd be depending on the room that I'm in. But as we were talking about before, like my studio is basically a converted storeroom. I mean, it's just a plywood office.
That's awesome.
Above our road gear. And I tried to make it look and sound good.
You'd never know. It looks amazing. You see, this room this room is terrific, but it's only 11 by 14. It's small. It's very cozy, but I mean, it's the back of what was the garage, until a year ago, August, and then we turned this into a teaching, recording area, lesson area, and things. So it doesn't matter. I'm telling you, your room looks really, really great. And you see all the great Gretsch stuff stacked up around.
Thank you. And this is right now in my office, which is I moved into recently. So I'm trying to keep it very plain and stark, kind of on purpose, because off camera, I'm in the process of building my desk, and I need to spend a little bit more time. I just haven't. We just got off of 2 weeks on, which is incredible.
That's right.
So we're getting back to work, and Tips is open. So I just feel incredibly grateful to be getting back to work and being able to play gigs. And I'll be honest. I had to take out a loan, an SBA loan during COVID. I sound like everything's doing great, but I'm gonna be digging myself out of debt for years. From not having been able to work for a year and a half. Thank goodness I was able to get a loan. But and I'm saying I'm grateful, and I am, but it's not like I'm everything's coming up roses for musicians. A lot of musicians are struggling, and struggling harder than I am. I'm just very fortunate that I'm able to get back to work. I have a lot of debt, but at least I can get back to work and start paying it off.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. No musicians that I know got rich during COVID.
No,
but I'm
no.
grateful to be getting back to work, you know?
Yes. Yeah. We all are. That's for sure. I'm not even going to say, I look forward to 2022. I'm just going to I'm, anticipating a great year ahead. And what lies ahead for Stanton Moore? What have you got coming down the pike?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've got 3 new lessons being edited.
Ooh.
Short versions of those will be coming out on YouTube. Anybody watching this who's not checking me out on YouTube yet, I'd love for you to come check me out over there. I'm doing a lot there, and just kind of presenting the tip of the iceberg on YouTube, and then all the full lessons with notation on the screen and a written PDF. That's all in my academy. So I'm working on my academy all the time, and writing, filming, and having my guys help me edit. Shout out to Tanner Gus, Dallas Quick, Nick Solnick, Big Stan Zlatkowski. All these guys are helping me edit. And as I discussed, like you got to know what you're good at, and you got to know what you're willing to put time in, and it's okay to delegate. And that's what I'm learning, and that's the way I like to do things. I'd rather focus on the music and practicing, and then having guys help me with the things that I've spent time doing, and I realize I'd rather spend time doing other things.
Yeah, I hear you. Phenomenal, man.
But I love writing. I love writing in Finale, and then laying it out in InDesign. And that's one of the things I do every morning. It's like my morning routine is make coffee and shed, practice, write new lessons. That's and then I eventually film them and put them up there, and then I'm doing all of that, and then man, I gotta count, but we've got I don't want to over exaggerate, but we've got a 3-week run in February, then Mardi Gras, which I'll play the Saturday night before Mardi Gras with Galactic, Sunday night before Mardi Gras with Anders Osborne and George Porter Jr., the bass player for the Meters, and then the Monday night before again with Galactic. Then we go back out on 3 weeks on, I think, the East Coast. So I think we do the West Coast first for 3 weeks, then Mardi Gras, where I'll be the house drummer at Tipitina's, which is like I'm the luckiest guy in the world, man. It's like I get to go on tour with my friends that I've been on the road with for 25 years, come back home, house drummer at my favorite venue in the world, and then go back out on the road for 3 weeks on the East Coast, and then come home and play Jazz Fest. So I'll probably play close to, I'm trying to pare it down. There was one year where I did 32 gigs in 11 days doing Jazz Fest.
I remember you saying that. Wow.
That was too many.
You documented that, right? At 2:30 a.m.
I did.
What's that?
The year that I documented it, I only did 19 gigs.
Okay, that's what it was. That's good.
Yeah. So I'm trying to pare it down. So I'll probably try to pare it down to like maybe 15 gigs in 2022. But that'll be after the 3-week run on the West Coast, Mardi Gras, 3-week run on the East Coast, and then Jazz Fest. I'll come back into town. And I love working, man. I love playing gigs. I love filming lessons. I love teaching. I love doing clinics, doing master classes, doing things like this that we're doing together, talking about drums. It's just like, what are you going to do with your life? Find something you love to do, and then do it a lot.
Right.
I love playing drums.
Man, this was awesome. I knew it was going to be awesome. I've been so excited since you and I first started chatting, and thank you so much. Very inspiring, a lot of great wisdom, and man, I want to practice after. I signed up for the 14-day trial on the Stanton Moore Drum Academy. So excited to check that out, and I've already checked it out. a bit. So it's phenomenal, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Man, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and anybody who wants to check it out, there is a 14-day trial. You can sign up for a 14-day trial to check it out. The Drum Academy, if you're interested. And I appreciate you mentioning it. It was great talking to you, man. This is fantastic.
Thank you, Stanton. Man, you have a fantastic rest of the year. Let's keep in touch. And man, I'd love to see you in person. I will definitely keep you on the radar as to when you're coming up here and want to make a trip down there and check out some music and see the city. Thank you so much.
Yes, indeed. I appreciate it, man. Take care.
Thank you. Everyone, take care. We'll see you next time.
See you down the line.